Leslie, first of all, please allow us to express our condolences for the loss of your sister, Deborah Sawyer, who passed from ovarian cancer, August 2016. Deborah founded EDI in 1991, which was tremendous. And what made her want to start an engineering firm, and how did she overcome what I'm sure were tremendous obstacles as a woman in that particular industry? Please tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, I could talk on this forever, obviously, but I don't want to be here all night. But I'll tell you the long and the short of it, and I'll start with the short of it, which is my sister finally decided one day to, in her words, she was tired of making the boys look good.
Makes sense.
She started out, she had her undergrad degree was in political science and with a minor in biology, even though she had thoughts of going to medical school, and that's a whole nother story in and of itself. But she decided ultimately to do something else. So she went to grad school. We were out in New Mexico in grad school together. I was in communication, and she majored in petroleum microbiology. She was an environmental scientist by trade. She actually was not an engineer, but she's a certified hazardous waste materials manager. So after college, she came back home to Columbus, Ohio, where we're from, and she started working for the Ohio EPA. And there she was the only female and only African American with a technical degree. And that made life very difficult for her. At one point, there was an opportunity for a promotion, and she was the most qualified person, having helped write the solid and hazardous waste rules or regulations for the state of Ohio. But she did not get the position. They gave it to a white male from another region, and they paid for him to move to Ohio, and they paid him a lot more than they were paying her. And as she said, she could have just moved right down the hall. So from EPA, she learned all that she could there. She really would like to have stayed and learned more, but she didn't get opportunities there, continued not to be promoted. There continued to be a lot of barriers, especially related to race and gender. So when the opportunity came along, people started looking at her. They knew that she knew basically more than anybody else in the state about solid and hazardous waste. So she was hired by a firm called URS. It was URS Dalton then. It was recently purchased by AECom here. And she was made the head of the solid, hazardous, and toxic waste management group. She learned everything she could about environmental science, from how to market, how to bring in business, how to hire and fire people, how to do budgets for projects. And so what happened was, and I'll make this part quick, when her boss of her division was recruited by a firm to head up a firm in the Quad Cities in Illinois, for those of you that don't know, that's Rock Island, Moline, Bettendorf, and Davenport, Iowa. He asked her, she was the first person that he looked to, so she moved to the Quad Cities, and she purchased a condo. Well, there she headed up the same kind of division over solid, hazardous, toxic waste. And when she left, hers was the only division in the black. It was the only one that was solid. And there was no air division when she moved there. She had to start it and maintain it and grow it to 3 million, which at the time was, or over 3 million, was big. And so that was over 30 years ago. So from there, she was still, I should say, while she was there, she was still being asked to get coffee for people, for meetings. And finally, one day, she asked her male colleagues, all of whom were white and all of whom were over 60, she said, "What's wrong? Are your hands broken?" So from that point on, the coffee was prepared before she entered the meetings. She decided at that point, you know what, the only way I'm going to be able to move up and make have fair compensation for what I do is to be my own boss and have my own business. So that's when she decided to start EDI with the sale of her condo and the money from that, and a loan from our mother. She branched out on her own. And I must say, she shopped around, without a business background, she shopped around a business plan that she had put together. She visited over 20 banks and was not offered to be seen by anybody until finally one banker, who happened to be a woman, invited her in and reviewed her plan and said it was excellent, and the rest was history. So she did, one last word, she had several barriers, as you can imagine. She was a woman, she was a minority, she was African American, she was young, she was in her 30s. She had moved around a lot, but to move up, to be promoted with increased salary each time because of the move. But that was seen as not being stable. You know, the same thing, money, as I mentioned, because banks didn't want to lend to her. So there were all these issues that continued to be difficult for her, but with hard work and perseverance and belief in herself, as she used to say, hard work, and more hard work.
It never stops.
Never stops.
It never stops, and that's a great story of resilience and determination and never giving up. And that's amazing. I'm actually going to move this to Charmaine. A bit about the subtitle, right? We have the panel that's called Legacy. And the second generation of you leading Uncle Remus, tell us what the words mean to you. And how do you incorporate the concept, and how do you manage trajectory of your family's business? How do you do it?
So the word legacy, especially with the African American community, is almost a word that's fading in a sense, because if you look at statistics, probably our community, businesses that are passed down through a second generation does not make it to a third generation. Whereas you look at other communities and you can see other ethnicities, and they're 6 generations, 5 generations, 7 generations. So, and I wanted to really change that. So technically, I did not go to school to sell chicken. Thank God for chicken. I went to school to be Oprah. I knew. I was at Columbia College. I was in front of the camera, behind the camera, all around the camera, because I love broadcasting. So I didn't go to school for chicken. But I saw that I had this family, that my parents, coming from Mississippi, no education, first restaurant, they didn't even know, every time they made money, they only bought 1 box of chicken at a time. And they had to close up and go get another box of chicken. So, you know, to see that, and to see what the opportunity afforded me and my siblings, I just knew that when I was in the mayor's office working on the Harold Washington, I got separated from my position when he transitioned, that a lot of people didn't have what I had, which was the opportunity to go into the family business. So when I went into the family business, I had the education, the formal school education, and you know, business is in my blood because I leave school and I go to the restaurant. So you know, we all work the restaurant, but to be able to understand that I was building a legacy, it just kind of came natural, and I just had the vision. I saw the business for way more than what it was at the time, and you know, just being in the family, being the youngest, I had the vision, I saw the vision, and I knew that I needed to begin to build a succession for the next generation, my 3rd generation, because the reality of it is that's a very hard statistic to maintain, especially in this microwave world that we're living in. And if you can imagine 12 kids, I have endless nieces and nephews. And I would sit right here and tell you that as I look down the line, I'm having a challenge finding a succession to carry on the 3rd generation of Uncle Remus, Saucy Fried Chicken. But I have to educate, and I have to continue to build it to sustain the business so that they can see the trajectory of the business. Because right now, maintaining that legacy past the 2nd generation in the African American community is a very sober reality.
Very, and it's amazing again to motivation, but I always say you have to be a little insane. You have to be a little nuts, right? Because if you think about entrepreneurship, I always think of we're the brokest people, because all of our money goes right back into the business, right? If you do it the right way, you're putting it right back into your business. So I know my motivation, and my motivation is young women and affecting them. What are your motivations?
I actually left, so I'm a newbie to the group. I just started PsychMo this year, actually 2 months ago. I will say this is the scariest thing I've ever done in my life, because I've worked in corporate America for over 20 years. I worked for the Coca-Cola company just recently for 10 years in the HR field, talent management, diversity and inclusion. And then I recently moved here, Boeing. I used to work for Boeing. I worked for Boeing for a year. Yep, I just quit Boeing in June of this year. And everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, wait, you gotta have this thing going for a little bit. But my motivation is being able to be a part of the future. When you think about the future of exercise, the future of fitness. I've always been into exercise. I've always ran track. I've always done like some type of running cross country. And I fell in love with indoor cycling 2 years ago. I was at home. I was on leave from Coke for a couple of months. And I was just trying to get some time to unwind and bike. I felt guilty. I was like, my boss was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm indoor cycling. I go every single day. And I started learning more about the business model and absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. But I said, you know what? If I went into it, I wanted to see how I could differentiate the experience. And then when you think about Coke is the soda can, you know, this soda water. And you think about how they made this global product. And when I said I left corporate America, I wanted to do something that was going to change fitness. And the experience at PsychMo does exactly that. It's an immersive experience. You literally feel that you are immersed in the ride that you're experiencing at that time. You completely forget that you're working out. And then when you walk out that door, you find that you're completely sold. So when you say, what's that next step? It's about being a part of that future and leveraging technology to be a part of the future of fitness. So that's my wish. That's my goal.
The same
Yes,
question?
yep, I'm sorry, yes. Same question. What's your motivation?
No, that was the question. My motivation is, I'm looking for the tissue. It's really hard to see kids nowadays. It's just hard to see them, you know. The hopelessness, the rage, the anger, the misguided. I mean, they think they know everything, but they know nothing. And this is different than, I think it's different than when we thought we knew everything. I mean, just the arrogance, the lack of respect, and the most fundamental part of us growing up was always thinking about the future. Was always thinking about what are you going to do with your future, what are you going to do with your life, what are you going to do, what are you going to be when you grow up. And we actually thought about it and made plans and connected and made the connections and did the work. I see kids nowadays actually convincing themselves that they have a plan when they have done absolutely nothing. They have an idea of what they want to be when they grow up. They don't know anyone who's done that. They have no resources. They don't have the grades. They don't have the family support. They have an idea. And that, to me, I've seen so many students go off to college and come back home. Raise your hand if you've seen a student, how many of you know a student that went off to college and was back after the first year? This is like the norm in our community. Because they spend thousands of dollars on prom, they spend thousands of dollars on senior year and doing all of this extravagant stuff. And they got 2.0s, they got 2.5s. They really, based on the school districts or where they come from, and I'm getting to what my motivation is. But based on the school districts where they come from, if you got a 4.0 in Chicago public schools, that's really like a 2.9. That's really like a 3.0 in Naperville.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the false sense of security that these kids have, academic performance, the grandiose ideas of how successful they're going to be based on absolutely nothing but a wish is sickening to me. And I think what Aerostar has been able to do is we've been able to provide kids with real tools, real dreams, real opportunities of success that's based in seeing people, not just seeing people do it, but also doing it themselves. We got kids that, first or second week of class, they up in the airplane, like for real. Talk bad now, you in the airplane, like see what you gonna do with that. So, get in front of a real Tuskegee Airman and not show respect, see what happened to you. So this is the kind of stuff that we position kids for. Seeing, our company was started with 3 African-American females, me first, and then another one of my buddies who is one of only 2 African-American pilots flying for JetBlue right now. And my other partner who actually got a degree from Leauge University in aviation and never got into the aviation industry. And so when you see 3 women running an aviation company and you got little girls coming in, all they can do is stay in the mirror and brush their hair, and put on their lipstick 17 times, you're like, really? Like, I can't afford to even get my nails done like you get your hair and nails done. Like, what are you doing? Your purse bigger than your book bag. Like, where are we going? And so this is the type of stuff that we actually use. Aviation is just the lure. It's the sexy. It's the fun. It's the energy. What we really are doing is we're showing kids who they are. We're helping pull off the layers of dysfunction at home, mental abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse. We're a safe place for girls and young boys to come. And they walk out of there leaving, they actually know real stuff that only 1% of the people on the planet know. How to fly an airplane, the parts of the airplane, how planes work, 10 different jobs in the aviation industry, and how they can actually be legitimate and walking out of high school with a pilot's license. Like, really? We have students that have got pilot's license before they got driver's license. We have students that have actually gone on pathways to become aerospace engineers, gotten scholarships. And all of our students, I would say 98% are African American, and we try to do half and half, boy and girl, boys to girls intentionally, because we believe that success, you have to make it intentional. If you don't look for black kids to be a part of your program, you won't have them. If you don't look for minority or qualified women to fill positions in your company, you won't have them. And so you have to create and you know this from experience, and you were knowing in HR, you have to seek out those candidates. But now Aerostar has got to the point where we're making those candidates. We're not just looking for them. We do aviation and aerospace education from kindergarten to career. So we're going into kindergarten classes, and by the time they can name all the parts of the airplane, the 4 forces of flight, the 3 axes of flight, and they can fly the flight simulator. So these are real opportunities that we present to kids, and actually changing the landscape of my community and doing for kids what somebody did for me. That's my motivation.
I'm going to find this very hard to come behind you with that, because when Charmaine and I had mentioned the vulnerable and transparency, the photographer just told me that I've been showing my underwear to everybody right behind me, so I want to apologize that I've been a little vulnerable and a little transparent, and my apologies for being a little exposed. So I'm sorry, just a little comic relief, just to let you know. So that's my biggest obstacle that I'm having right now. And then that's my next question. So I'm actually opening this up to everyone. What's your biggest obstacle that you've overcome or that you're